The Lost World Before the Flood, the Book of Enoch. Hear now the words of the Book of the Upright, the chronicle of the generations from the first man, Adam, to the great turning of the world. This is the record, sealed in truth, of the days when the earth was young and the memory of the garden was still a whisper in the wind. And it came to pass, after the earth had drunk the blood of righteous Abel and bore the mark of his brother Cain, that the seed of Adam multiplied upon the face of the world. They were not few, and their voices rose as a great murmur from the valleys and the plains. The sons of men and the daughters of women increased, and they spread outward from the east, building for themselves settlements and strongholds. They raised stones to mark their territories and learned the crafts of the earth, to forge iron and brass, to build walls, to till the soil with greater cunning than before. In those days, the names of the patriarchs were great in years and in glory. Seth, the appointed seed, walked in the path of his father Adam, in truth and in solemnity. And to Seth was born Enoch, and to Enoch, Kenan, and to Kenan, Mahalalel, and to Mahalalel, Jared. Their lives were long, a chain of silver stretching back to the dawn, and they carried the knowledge of the Holy One, the Most High, who had formed man from the dust and breathed into him the breath of life. They gathered their households and taught them the ways of righteousness, to call upon the name of the Lord. For a time, there was a separation, a line drawn in the sand of time. The children of Seth, who dwelt upon the mountains, were known as the children of God, for they sought to preserve the likeness of their Maker. But the children of Cain, who spread wide in the land, were mighty in the ways of the world. They built the first city and named it after their father's son, and in it, the arts of war and the pride of possession grew strong. Yet, as a slow poison seeps into a deep well, a change began to stir in the hearts of men. The sons of the righteous, the children of Seth, looked down from their high places and saw the daughters of Cain, and behold, they were fair to look upon. And a desire took root in them, a longing not merely for beauty, but for the ease and the power of the world below. The elders warned them. They spoke of the covenant, of the separation that was their strength and their shield. But the hearts of the younger generation were enticed. They said one to another, "Why should we dwell in austerity upon these barren heights? Let us go down and take wives for ourselves from the daughters of men, and our possessions will be multiplied, and our name will be made great in the land." And so it was. They descended from the mountains, these sons of the Holy One, and they took for themselves wives from all whom they chose. They mingled their seed and their spirit with the seed and spirit of the world. They built not altars, but monuments. They sought not the face of God, but the works of their own hands. And for a season, it seemed they had found prosperity. Their settlements grew vast, their flocks countless, their storehouses filled to bursting. But the fruit of this union was bitter. The knowledge of the Holy One, once guarded like a sacred flame in the high places, was now diluted, then forgotten, then mocked. The children born of these unions were mighty, men of renown, but their might was turned to violence, and their renown was born of pride. They looked upon the earth and said, "It is ours to subdue, ours to command." They looked upon heaven and no longer bowed their heads. The world was filled with them. And in their hearts, the first seed of corruption, sown in the field of desire, now sprouted into a great and terrible tree, whose shadow began to darken the whole earth. The line was blurred. The light flickered. And a great silence fell between heaven and earth, a silence of waiting, of gathering judgment. For the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great upon the earth. The world grew thick with the works of men. Cities of stone and ambition rose where once there were only tents and altars. The air, once clear with the scent of desert herbs and the smoke of simple offerings, now grew heavy with the smokes of forges and the dust of ceaseless labor. The children of the new age, born from the union of the mountain and the plain, were a race apart. They were the Gibberim, the mighty men of old, men of renown. But their strength was a storm, and their fame was a blight. Their hearts, swollen with the power of their lineage, turned from the gentle dominion commanded of Adam. They saw the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea not as fellow creations under the care of man, but as possessions for their pleasure and their sport. And a new cruelty entered the world. They began to take the young of animals, not for sustenance, but for mockery. They would set one against the other for their amusement, delighting in the struggle and the spilling of blood. The plaintive cries of the creatures rose from the earth, a new and discordant sound that had not been heard before. This was but the beginning. For the heart, once hardened to the suffering of a beast, soon hardens to the suffering of its own kind. The violence that began in the market squares and the fields soon flowed into the streets of the great cities. A man would be struck down for a glancing insult, a family dispossessed for a coveted plot of land. The strong preyed upon the weak, and the weak, in their desperation, sought stronger masters, forming bands of marauders to inflict upon others what had been inflicted upon them. The earth was filled with violence, and the law was the sharpened sword and the clenched fist. In the 180th year of the life of Jared, a man named Zillah took 2 wives. This was a thing not known from the beginning, and it was an abomination in the eyes of the Lord, for he had created one woman for one man. The name of one wife was Naamah, and she was cunning in the arts of the world. She saw the disorder of the age and perceived in it an opportunity. She began to lead the hearts of men astray with new devices. Naamah took the timbrel and the flute, instruments of simple joy, and perverted their use. She composed songs not of praise or of noble deeds, but of lamentation and mourning for the dead, music that stirred the soul to a fever pitch of sorrow and despair. Men would gather to hear her play, and they would weep and wail until their spirits were broken and vulnerable. In this state, she and her followers would whisper to them of new powers, of spirits that could be petitioned, of forces in the earth and air that could be bent to human will if only the proper rites were observed. And so, the final veil was torn. Idolatry, which had lurked in the shadows of the human heart since the day Cain built a city unto himself, now stepped forth into the light. Men ceased to look to the invisible God whose throne was in the heavens. They fashioned for themselves gods of stone and wood, of silver and gold. They made images of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they bowed down to them. They built high places on the hills, the very hills where Seth and his children had once called upon the name of the Lord, and upon these altars they poured out libations and offered sacrifices to deaf and dumb idols. The world became a cacophony of false worship. Every city had its patron deity, every man his private shrine. The knowledge of the Creator grew dim, a tale told by frail old men who were laughed at for their simplicity. The earth was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. The violence of their hands and the idolatry of their hearts were twin plagues that sickened the very ground. The groans of the oppressed and the blasphemies of the worshippers of stone rose up as a single, foul mist, and the Lord saw it. And his spirit did not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. And the days of his grace were numbered. Yet, in the midst of this great and gathering darkness, a single point of light remained, small and steady, like a lone star in a storm-blackened sky. His name was Enoch. And in the year of the world 960, in the 116th year of the life of Jared, a child was born to him. And Jared named him Enoch, which signifies, to dedicate or to initiate, for he said, "This one shall be dedicated to the service of the Lord, for the earth has become defiled." From his earliest youth, Enoch was set apart. While other children played at war and fashioned idols from the river clay, Enoch would look to the heavens. He listened not to the songs of Naaman, but to the whisper of the wind through the high grasses, hearing in it a voice that others had forgotten. He was a quiet child, given to long silences, and his eyes held a light that seemed to see beyond the veil of the world. As he grew into a man, the corruption of his generation pressed in upon him like a physical weight. He walked through the marketplaces and saw the idols and their niches, saw the altars running with blood not meant for the true God. He heard the boasts of the mighty, the cries of the oppressed, and the laughter that accompanied acts of cruelty. His soul recoiled. He saw that wisdom had perished from the earth, and in its place was only a cunning madness. And so Enoch separated himself. He did not merely dwell in the high places of his fathers, he walked a solitary path between heaven and earth. He took a wife and fathered sons and daughters, for this was the way of the world, but his heart was not in the world. He built for himself a small chamber, a place of solitude, and there he would retreat for days, for seasons, shutting the door on the clamor of mankind. In the profound silence of that chamber, Enoch sought the God of his father Adam. He fasted and prayed, and he called upon the name of the Lord with a longing that burned like a fire in his bones. He did not seek visions of power or secrets of dominion, as the sorcerers and idolaters did. He sought only truth. He sought the face of the one who had breathed life into the dust. And the Lord, seeing the purity of his heart and the singularity of his purpose, accepted him. The Spirit of God, which had withdrawn from the multitude of men, rested upon Enoch and clothed him with wisdom. And the wisdom given to him was not like the knowledge of the gibbering, which was for building and destroying. It was a wisdom of the Spirit, a knowledge of the celestial order and the terrible, beautiful justice of the Creator. He was shown the workings of the heavens, the courses of the sun and moon, the names and functions of the stars. He understood the rhythms of the earth and the seasons not as a farmer understands them, but as a priest understands a sacred ritual. He was given knowledge of the future, of the cycles of judgment and redemption that were written into the fabric of time itself. And most heavily upon his soul, he was shown the great and final judgment, when all deeds will be weighed and all secrets laid bare. Enoch became a scribe of righteousness. He recorded all the signs of heaven and earth, all the days of the generations, and the prophecies given to him. He wrote with the certainty of one who has seen the scroll of fate unrolled before him. And filled with this divine knowledge, he could no longer remain in his solitary chamber. A fire was kindled within him, a compulsion to speak, to warn, to plead with the children of men before the door of grace was shut forever. He emerged from his seclusion, a solitary figure of light stepping back into a world of shadows, ready to deliver the words that had been entrusted to him. Enoch emerged from his solitude not with the fury of a prophet of doom, but with the heavy sorrow of a physician who must tell a dying man his fate. He went out among the children of men, standing in the assembly places, at the crossroads of their bustling cities. His face was pale, his frame lean from fasting, but his eyes shone with a terrifying clarity that made the mighty men and the sorcerers fall silent. He did not raise his voice in a shout, yet his words carried, clear and sharp, cutting through the noise of the world like a blade. "Hear me, you sons of men," he began, his tone level, yet imbued with an authority that was not of the earth. "You have forsaken the great, eternal, and holy covenant which the Lord made with you. You walk after the stubbornness of your own hearts and after idols and after spirits. You have made for yourselves gods of molten images, and you do all manner of evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him to anger." The people gathered, some in mockery, some in curiosity. They saw a man who wore no ornaments, who carried no weapon, whose power was only in his words. "Why do you worship that which has no breath in it?" he cried, pointing to a stone idol draped in gold. "You bow to the work of your own hands, to that which your own chisel has carved. It has ears, but it cannot hear, it has eyes, but it cannot see. It is a lie, and your faith in it is your destruction." He spoke to them of the order of creation, of the sun that rules the day and the moon that governs the night, not as gods to be worshipped, but as faithful servants obeying the command of their master. "They do not change their paths or forsake their duty," Enoch declared. "But you, who have been given understanding and a choice, you have forsaken your duty. You have corrupted your ways and have abandoned the fear of the Lord." Then his words turned to the violence that filled the earth. "Your hands are full of blood. You have taken the life he gave and trampled it in the dust for sport and for gain. The earth groans beneath the weight of your iniquity. The cry of the slain, from man to the smallest creature, has risen up and pierced the heavens. The Lord has heard it. He has counted every drop of blood spilled in anger, and his justice will not sleep forever." Some in the crowds grew angry. The mighty men, the gibberim, clenched their fists. "Who is this man to judge us?" they muttered. "His words are a poison." They plotted to silence him, to take his life as they had taken so many others. But a strange fear fell upon them when they drew near to him. It was as if an invisible wall stood between Enoch and their malice. They saw the light in his countenance and were afraid, for it was a light that judged them and revealed the darkness in their own souls. For many days and seasons, Enoch walked among them, a living conscience, a voice from a world they had forgotten. He taught them the paths of righteousness, pleading with them to turn from their idols and their violence. He laid before them life and death, blessing and curse. But their hearts were hardened like stone, their ears dulled by the songs of Naaman and the clatter of their own ambitions. They listened, but they did not hear. They saw, but they did not perceive. And Enoch, his mission of warning complete, saw that the spirit of man would not repent. A great grief settled upon him, for he knew what must follow. The time for words was ending, resolve of men did not soften, it hardened like clay fire in a kiln. The words of Enoch, which had fallen like seeds upon the earth, were trampled underfoot or snatched away by the birds of pride and contempt. He had spoken truth, and they had chosen the lie. He had offered a return to the path of life, and they had sprinted further down the road of death. Enoch saw that the breach was final. The covenant was broken, not by God, but by the hand of man, and the vessel of humanity was cracked beyond any earthly repair. A profound weariness settled upon his spirit, not for himself, but for the world. He could no longer walk freely among the children of men, for his very presence was a judgment upon them, and their hatred for the light in him had grown fierce. He returned to his solitary place, but now his prayers changed. They were no longer pleas for the people to turn back, but a solemn communion with the Judge of all the earth. He understood the terrible necessity of what was to come. In the 365th year of his life, a sense of culmination filled the air. The seasons themselves seemed to hold their breath. Enoch gathered his household, his son Methuselah, whose own name whispered of a coming sending forth, and the others. His words to them were few, weighted with a finality that broke their hearts. The world has chosen its path, he said, his voice calm as a still sea. My time of striving is complete. Keep the ways of the Lord, you and your children, though you walk alone in a world of shadows. For the Lord will not always strive with man, yet a remnant shall be preserved. Then, on a day when the sky was a flawless, hard blue, he walked out from his dwelling, not to preach, but to be received. He went to a place apart, a high field where the wind spoke a cleaner language. And as he stood there, praying, a great and silent wonder took place. It was not with thunder or earthquake, but with a terrifying gentleness. The heavens did not so much open as they became thin, like a veil pulled aside. A radiance, not of the sun, descended upon him, a chariot of light and spirit. The sons of men who had secretly followed him, some out of mockery, some out of a last, faint hope, watched from a distance. They saw him enveloped in a glory that did not consume, but translated. His form, once solid and familiar, seemed to become one with the brilliant atmosphere. He was taken up, not in a violent snatching, but in a gradual, majestic ascent, as if the earth itself was releasing a pure offering back to its creator. He was gone, no longer walking among men. A great silence fell upon the witnesses. The mockery died in their throats. For a moment, a terrifying clarity fell upon them. They had driven away the one truly righteous man, and heaven had claimed its own. They sent messengers throughout the land, saying, Behold, Enoch has been taken by the Lord. And a profound fear gripped the hearts of the people. They gathered and went to the place from which he was taken, and they built a great altar there, and offered sacrifices upon it, invoking the name of the Lord. But it was a fear born of terror, not of repentance. It was the fleeting shock of a criminal who sees the judge's gavel raised. Once the shock faded, their hearts, accustomed to corruption, reasserted themselves. The memory of the light made the ensuing darkness seem all the more comfortable, for it was the darkness they had chosen. Their brief, panicked piety was like a sputtering candle, extinguished by the next gust of wind. The world, having lost its last, best hope, plunged headlong into the final, feverish ascent was a ghost that haunted the corners of men's minds. In the silence he left behind, the world felt larger, emptier, the heavens suddenly more distant. The altars built in that first flush of fear saw offerings for a time, but the prayers were muttered, not from love or devotion, but from a superstitious dread of the power that had taken him. They sought to appease, not to know. And the heart that worships out of fear alone soon finds a way to bury that fear under a mountain of distractions. The generation of Enoch passed, and with them, the last, living memory of his light. His son, Methuselah, walked in the ways of his father, a solitary oak in a forest of brambles. He bore the weight of the prophecies entrusted to him, his very name a silent testament to the judgment that was coming. When he is dead, it shall be sent. But to the multitude, he was just another old man, a relic of a fading, irrelevant piety. The corruption, momentarily checked, returned with a fury 10 times greater. It was as if the removal of the righteous one had broken the final dam holding back the flood of iniquity. The violence of the earth grew sophisticated, organized. Kings arose, not as shepherds of their people, but as tyrants who built their thrones upon pyramids of skulls. They waged war not for land or necessity, but for the sport of it, for the glory of their names. The arts of Naaman evolved from lamentations into spells and incantations. Sorcery and divination became the highest sciences. Men sought to bind the very elements to their will, to wrestle secrets from the fallen spirits they now worshipped. The earth itself seemed to sicken under the burden. A spiritual miasma, thick with the fumes of blood and blasphemy, lay over the valleys and cities. The laughter of men became a harsh, joyless sound. Trust was a forgotten currency. Brother betrayed brother, father deceived son. All flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. The image of God in man was so defaced, so scarred by idolatry and cruelty, that it was nearly unrecognizable. And in the heavens, a council was held. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. The spirit that had striven with man since the day Cain rose against Abel now withdrew, its work complete. The door of grace, held open for centuries by the prayers of the righteous and the long-suffering of the Creator, began to swing shut. The chronicle of this age, the Book of the Upright, closes this portion of its record with a heavy silence. The scroll is rolled, sealing the fate of that world. The narrative of the generations from Adam to Enoch's ascent is finished. All that remains is the waiting. The storm clouds of divine justice, patient and inexorable, gathered on the horizon of time. The world, drunk on its own power and deaf to every warning, danced on the edge of the abyss, unaware that the footsteps of the only righteous man to escape its fate still echoed in the halls of heaven, a final witness against them. By subscribing, you ensure you will be here when the next chapter is revealed. You will bear witness to the building of the great vessel, the gathering of the animals, and the 40 days that reshape the world. Do not let this story be lost to you. Let your voice be heard. Your likes and comments are more than just feedback. They are like markings on a map, showing us which paths through these ancient texts you wish to explore further. Tell us what moved you. Was it the solitary light of Enoch? The chilling descent into violence? Your thoughts guide our journey. Share this chronicle with others who seek depth and mystery. Pass it on to those who feel that the oldest stories still have secrets to whisper. Subscribe now. The next scroll awaits.